Reed is the one that tested it for us.
Did it go off okay?
It did.
Okay. I want to take your attention to around 10 o'clock. What were you doing?
I was in my office at East Broad Street. I was checking emails, normal stuff that I do in the morning times. At the time, there was a GBI agent, not in our region, that was there checking the files of a former employee of ours. And we were having a conversation, and they were trying to hire this former employee. And I jokingly told her, "You're wasting your time. I would clone this young lady if she would come back." We were talking and conversating back and forth, but just that was normal for me to be in and out of the office.
Okay. And what happened at that point?
I'm sitting at my desk. My cell phone is sitting beside me as where I have it plugged up at. And the first Centegix alert went off at around 10:15, around that time. Then a second one, then a third one, then a fourth one. My first instinct was that it was malfunctioning. Didn't know what was going on, didn't realize what the situation was, and I said to myself, something must be going off with it. Then I started realizing it was Appalachia High School. It does give us an alert in the location.
When y'all do the trainings, is it normally just one person pushes the button to start it?
Normally.
Y'all weren't ready for 20 people to push the button?
That's correct.
Okay. So you found out it's at Appalachia High School. What did you do at that point?
I kind of thought it was odd to have that many at one time, that early. One of my majors, Major Todd Drews, whose office is right beside me, come running to my office and says, "There's an active shooter at Appalachia." And I kind of, I said, "There's no way." So I remember the GBI agent standing right there beside me, and I ran outside, put my vest on in the truck, and I don't really recall driving from 233 to Heyman Morris where Appalachia was at.
How far away is it?
I'd say 3 or 4 miles. My phone was ringing. I do remember turning down Heyman Morris Road, and there was a line of blue lights and red lights from as far as I could see. And when I turned in, Appalachia has a circle drive.
Okay.
And I remember going to the left. I don't recall ever hearing on the radio where the location was at.
Let me pull up the school map. Could you pull up States 3.1, which has already been tendered into Evan Shrine? Is that a map of the school?
Yes, it is.
Now, where you were, just talk about what you're talking about.
Okay, so where the Appalachia High School Bexar County logo is, I pulled here.
I think you can touch the screen and it makes that like that.
Okay.
Players and stuff.
So
Did it
I
work?
don't know if you're able to see me right here. I pulled right here behind a fire truck. And as I pulled up,
Actually, the touching's not working for some reason.
sorry.
It's fine. There's a should be a someone stole it. Oh, they will. Yeah, you can use that. Thank you.
As I turned into the school, I parked right here, and there was a fire truck here, and at that point there were several people pulling up. By the grace of God, when I pulled in there, I run across Tanner Good, who was the former SRO at that school, and I said, "Tanner, where are we going?" And he said, "Jayhawk." Tanner had gotten his patrol rifle out, so he and I intercepted in the middle in where the flagpole was at, and we started running that direction. And at that point, I couldn't hear anything. I don't remember or recall hearing anything of that, what the circumstances were. At that point in time, I intercepted Sergeant Schultz, and we had implemented what's called an RTF group, where our fire and EMS. 2 of the firemen jumped off the fire truck, which was Jeremy Thayer, who's our captain at the time. He is still with the fire department, and Sergeant Mixon. They got their helmets on, their vests on, and they grabbed their bags, and they started going in the building with us. As we entered the building, we run down this side here, and Jay Hall is here. That's where we entered. I remember specifically giving them orders, because we didn't know if they start shooting out.
Who were you giving orders to?
To the deputies and the EMTs who were unarmed.
They were with you?
They were with me on our hip.
Okay.
I said, if they begin shooting out from inside the building out, do not shoot back in.
Okay.
That's how we're trained.
Do you know how many shooters are in the school?
We did not know at the time.
Okay. So what did you do at that point?
We entered the door, and when I entered the door, I observed who was later to be Colt Gray, handcuffed on the floor, and beside him was a rifle with several magazines laying beside him.
Okay. What else did you see?
Just beyond him was a person laying face down that I could tell was not moving. And obviously had injuries to that person. Battalion Chief Thayer and Sergeant Mixon went to them first. We were together. That person was later identified as Mason Skirmahorn.
I'm going to show you Smart State Exhibit number 42. Actually, you identify what that is.
That is a picture of Mason Skirmahorn in the parking lot.
On September 4th, 2024, was Mason Skirmahorn under the age of 18?
Yes, he was.
All right, this time I'd like to post State Exhibit number 42.
No objection. 42 is good.
So, the medics tell you that Mason has passed away at that
That's
point? Okay, what do you do at this point?
So myself and several others that were in the room or in the hallway, Tanner Good, Sergeant Schultz, Lieutenant Wilkerson, several others were starting to intercept that area. I heard someone say, Deputy King and Sergeant Boyd had already taken Colt into custody. I heard someone say there may be a secondary shooter. We weren't sure at the time. So we began clearing that particular area of J Hall, K Hall, I Hall, and those that intercepted that hallway.
We have a map here, so you can show on that. Probably easier. It's kind of zoomed in. It's a portion of the map you were looking at already. And when you say clearing, what's your objective?
Our objective is to stop the killing and render aid,
Okay.
whatever that may be. Our job is to go in and intercept whoever's doing the damage and whoever's doing the killing at this point. That's our job at that point. So myself and several others were clearing the bathrooms to try to find out if other people were in the building.
All right. Show us about where you're talking about.
J Hall here. The bathroom is where we first started. Workroom and bathroom area right here. This is J.
Yeah.
Right here. This is where we went and started clearing, and we started clearing each hallway as best we could. Then we started fanning out, and what we use is what's called a bubble technique,
Okay.
where the bubble expands like a balloon.
Okay. So instead of everybody just running down one hall, you're all kind of...
We're fanning out, yes.
Okay. Do you have any difficulties getting into the rooms?
Yes. Our teachers and our students and staff are trained that all the doors should be locked or closed and no access to those rooms.
Okay.
So it's very difficult. And at that time, during the chaos of what's going on, the teachers are trained, do not let us get in the room, even though they're asked to.
What did y'all do to overcome that?
We have keys that are able to let us in the doors after we are able to clear the building later on. So in essence, the teachers and the kids are left to their own defense till we can go to the next room and clear it and make sure that room is safe. That's the difficult part.
Once you've cleared for safety purposes, what's your next objective?
Our next objective is to secure what we have, secure the scene, and secure what we have at this point in time, and render aid in this case. And that's what we did. We started rendering aid with our RTFs.
Okay. What specifically did you do in the rendering aid part?
Obviously, there were numerous people there. I began checking the area, and I came across one of the victims in the hallway. She was laying on the floor. Myself and Captain Rob Curott with the Winder Police Department at the time began rendering aid to her.
You know what her name was?
I'm drawing a blank.
Tell me about her injuries. Did you see them?
Yes, and I'll think of it in a minute. I'm so sorry. She had extensive injuries to her. She was bleeding in a lot of different locations that I could see. She began talking to us, and I said, let's calm down for just a little bit. And Captain Curott and I were talking to her. And what we have in our RTF bags are what's called a drag bag. And in that drag bag, it's able for us to put a patient on that and take them out a whole lot easier and pull them out of a situation that's like this. We rolled her over, and I noticed that she had extensive injuries to her forearm and wrist. Devastating injuries. I remember later on I had a lot of blood on me from her injuries. I was trying to calm her down, and we got her on the bag, and we started taking her out of the school, out of J Hall where we entered, myself, Captain Curott.
Before you took her out and you're putting her on that drag bag, did she make any statements to you?
She said, do not cover me with that sheet. Don't cover my face. Please don't let me die. And I said, we're not going to let that happen. And I remember asking her name, and she said, Natalie. It's a beautiful girl. And she said, please, don't cover me. I said, we're not.
Did you do any sort of medical type procedure with her?
We did. So as we exited the building, Lieutenant Chad Norris had lined up about 4 or 5 ambulances right outside the door. And as we got her outside, I'm trying to calm her down. She's obviously very distraught. She's losing a lot of blood. I yelled for a tourniquet, and I didn't have one on me. And as we were lining up behind one of the ambulances, I yelled for a tourniquet, and Colonel Ham grabbed a tourniquet from one of the ambulances, and it was pink. I'll never forget it being pink. And I leaned down and I said, Natalie, this is not going to feel good. She said, what do you mean? I said, we have to put a tourniquet on you. You're bleeding pretty bad. And as I put the tourniquet up her arm, and Captain Curott did, I said, we got to go higher. And we got it up to her shoulder. And I said, this is not going to feel good, baby girl. And I grabbed her hair off of her face, and I said, just hold on for just a second. He tourniqueted it down, and she screamed extremely loud, and I said, it's going to hurt, but we have to do this. We got that tourniqueted on, and at that point, she calmed down a little bit. I told her she's going to be okay. I said, the next time I see you, we're going to talk. We loaded her in the back of an ambulance with another patient. Then I ran back in the building.
When you were taking Natalie out, was Colt Gray still in the hallway?
He was.
And did Natalie see him?
She did.
Did she make any statements to him?
She cursed him and called him some curse words pretty loudly.
So Natalie is left in the ambulance. You go back inside. What do you see then?
I began assessing the situation as best I could to try to locate. We had many RTF teams in there at that point, rendering aid to people. I walked just beyond the bathroom, and there was a copy room, if you will, and there was a victim that ended up being Miss Irmy in that room that was deceased. I walked down to the left, down, I believe it was K Hall or I Hall. Don't recall which hall it was, but I walked down and I located Coach A.
By Coach A, who do you mean?
Coach Aspinwall, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Coach Aspinwall, we called him Coach A. Leaned down to try to find a pulse because I didn't know if RTF had found him, and he did not have a pulse. I then walked back down the hall. They were rendering aid to Coach Phoenix in an ambulance at that point. They had gotten him out. He was at the classroom beside where Coach Aspinwall was at. I went back down the hall and located the room where Colt had initially shot Natalie and the rest of the victims, and where Christian was laying. And Christian was deceased as well.
Was Christian also on September 4th, 2024 under the age of 18?
Yes, he was.
Okay. What did y'all do at that point?
We made the decision to try to evacuate the building as best as possible to get the remaining students and the teachers out of the classrooms as best we could. It was a very difficult decision. Probably one of the decisions that I regret is walking the kids and the students and the staff through that hallway. But I wanted to get them out of the building as quickly as I could and not have them in those classrooms where we had them locked in until we could get it cleared.
What was your regret about it?
We had to walk the kids to the crime scene. A lot of kids had to see things that I don't think children of that age should see. Teachers did not need to see that. But we had to get them out. I wanted to get them out of that building as quickly as possible.
And where did y'all take them?
We escorted them out of the building to the football field, where we did the unification with the parents and the staff as best we could.
When did parents start arriving?
Almost immediately.
Were there parents there when you arrived?
There might have been one or two there that had gotten there because the phones start going off pretty quickly. Parents start getting notifications that the school's locked down. When I exited J Hall after all that was done, I walked back out to the area where we had the EOC, which was where I parked at the flagpole. At the time, Chief Schumann was the fire chief. I saw him walking towards me, and I just stopped. I was overwhelmed at what I saw, at the people and the parents and the cars and the emergency response. Just completely overwhelming. He said, "Stop! Don't walk anymore. Let me walk to you." And he hugged me and said, "Are you okay?" And he noticed I had a lot of blood on me, and I said, "I'm fine." But we talked, and that's when I noticed that thousands of parents and people were showing up at one time, and we were trying to decide how we were going to manage through the school system getting parents and kids and loved ones together.
Okay. Tell me about the law enforcement response.
It was quite overwhelming. There was over 140, 150 law enforcement officers that responded, agencies from all across North Georgia, federal agencies that showed up, state agencies that showed up. And that's just well over 150 just in the first hour.
Did you request assistance from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation on this case?
I did. I felt that I could get, they could assist us in what we were going to deal with as far as the size of the crime scene and the timing. And so I called Director Hosey, the director of the GBI, and I asked him to show up. And he said, I'll be there within the hour. And he provided unlimited resources.
Okay. Was at some point after you finished doing what you're doing, did you retreat to, I guess what's best called a command center? Where was that located at?
We decided to put the command center in the library, in the center of the school. We had a lot of Wi-Fi there, and we could separate everyone out with patrol or law enforcement, EMS, fire, and we could have GEMA, EMA directors and folks like that. So we made that decision to have it inside the school instead of outside the school.
Okay. While you were in this command center, did you start getting tips or calls about possible other shooters?
We did. My phone was obviously going berserk. We began getting calls that there were other shooters at other schools. As we said, we thought there was a secondary shooter in the school. I happened to pick up my phone, and it was my daughter, who was at the other high school, Windabera. And she said, Daddy, are we okay? I said, your SROs are there with you, and you're okay. And she said, Daddy, we're locked down, and they're telling us there's another shooter here. You know, as a dad, you're supposed to protect your children, and I couldn't do anything. But I told her that the deputies were there. I turned over and I said to the Georgia State Patrol major, and I said, do me a favor and send some troopers over to the high schools. And they did. And they secured that for us as well. And I had multiple agencies coming up, and I said, let's dispatch to other schools because we're getting these other calls. So by the grace of God, those 150 law enforcement officers were able to be dispatched to other schools and ensure safety for those kids and those staff members and those parents when they got their kids.
And were some of those officers dispatched also Bexar County Sheriff's Office employees?
They were.
Okay. And then Brandon Bazinet and I'm drawing a blank on his first name, Deputy Townsend, did they work for you at the time?
They did.
Okay. At some point, did y'all become aware of a home address for Colt Gray? We
did. After doing some research, we did.
And did you send deputies to secure that location?
As immediately as we could, yes.
Okay. At some point, when you're unifying with the parents with the children, did you have a task to do at that point?
So we knew that we had 4 people brutally murdered. And I had to sit down and doing this 25 years, probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do is tell 2 sets of families that their babies were murdered.
Did you do that personally?
I did. We set up an area with their families, and I met with Christian's family first. I recruited a couple of school personnel because there was a language barrier between myself and Christian's family. And I had to tell them that Christian's life was taken. And all I could do was sit there with him and pray with him and tell him I'm sorry. And then I had to meet with Mason's family and tell them the same thing. And then I had to meet with Miss Iramy's husband and tell him that his wife was murdered. I wasn't able to meet with Coach Aspinwall's wife. She was not on site. But that was done off site. I later talked to her and talked to some family members.
The residence that you sent those deputies to secure, was that in Barrow County?
It was, yes.
Just a second, please. No further questions, thank you.
Is there any cross?
No cross, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.